So Usyk looked broken against Rico. So the question is simple. Did Rico expose the decline, or did Usyk just show us the real reason he vacated? Because this does not feel like retirement. It feels calculated. So Simon Jordan from TalkSport Boxing said it feels like Zuffa. And that may matter, because Usyk is not just a fighter. He is the credibility, he is authority, he is culture. But against Rico, he looked different, slower, older, human. So maybe the belts were never the ending. Maybe, just maybe, it's about control. So this is a reaction to a Simon Jordan interview on TalkSport Boxing. So hopefully I can give an interesting perspective that can stimulate the mind. So the first assertion is that Usyk showed cracks against Rico. He didn't look like the fighter who dismantled Joshua twice. I agree with that premise. That is true. But the question is why? So was it a poor camp? Did Usyk have a poor camp? Was it poor tactics? Or was it great execution by Rico? Or was it a combination of all these things? There's some extenuating circumstances, and some people have indicated that Usyk did have some extenuating circumstances. Was it simply just the wrong style for Usyk? Was he fighting someone who just had the style to be extraordinarily competitive with him? I think the premise is accurate. There were cracks against Rico, but like I said, the deeper reason, or the deeper thing to understand, is why. Now the next assertion is that Simon Jordan doesn't believe this is retirement. He says it feels and smells like Zuffa. Clearly that is figurative language. And clearly, when we look at Usyk, what does Usyk represent? It's a good question. What does Usyk represent? He brings credibility and he brings authority within the boxing context. That means to negotiate with Usyk, it's not just about money. Money's part of the equation, but it's about money, cultural impact, and control. I would say that these are probably the determining factors. And think of it like this, or think of this. Who needs who more? I would argue that Zuffa needs Usyk more than Usyk needs Zuffa. So therefore, any collaboration between Zuffa and Usyk would have to be so favorable for Usyk, because Usyk brings that level of credibility and that level of authority. So the next assertion is that vacating all three belts at the same time is a calculated legacy move. Why? Why is it a calculated legacy move? Well, Usyk exits as unbeaten and undisputed, and this avoids a next generation defeat that could rewrite his legacy. I think I agree with part of that. It could be a calculated move. However, if Usyk was to lose, and therefore lose the undisputed title, does that rewrite his position in history? I'm not sure. When I think about great fighters, well, a lot of great fighters have losses. Think of Muhammad Ali, think of Roberto Duran, think of Evander Holyfield, think of Oscar De La Hoya. Many great fighters have losses, so I'm not sure if a loss rewrites his legacy. It creates another legacy, but I'm not sure if it rewrites his legacy. Maybe it does. I would just question that premise. However, the calculated move part, I can understand that. But I think there's other elements to it. So that may be part of the answer. And the other element is the mandatory obligations. The mandatory obligations of all these different belts, they are difficult to manage. So, and then the other part of the question would be, if he's going to continue to fight, if he continues to fight and he loses, would that still not affect his legacy? Would a loss affect his legacy, regardless if it's for the undisputed title or not? I'm not sure it would, because I think he's already established himself as a legend. So a loss doesn't necessarily change that. But like I said, it changes. What the loss does is that the person who gets the victory, it propels their momentum, it propels their star power. But whether it affects Usyk, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Or maybe the better question is, how much does it affect Usyk? Okay, maybe it might change things slightly, but he's still seen as a great elite fighter. That will never change, regardless if he's unbeaten or not. And then the next statement then switches to Caballero, who inherits the WBC title, technically without throwing a punch. And this raises a question of, what does it mean to have a title in 2026? Now, within the Caballero context, this is interesting because Caballero is such a legitimate contender and has such credibility as a fighter that I think him inheriting the WBC title does not affect the credibility of the heavyweight division at all, because he's beaten high-ranked fighters. Frank Sanchez, really good fighter. Zhilei Zhang, really good fighter. He has a resume. So even though technically he hasn't earned the WBC belt in the ring, he hasn't earned it in the ring by defeating a champion. He has earned his status of being number one and inheriting that title. And then we move on to Ben Whittaker, who was successful on Saturday. Congratulations to him. And their assertion here, and this is an assertion made by Spencer Oliver and Simon Jordan, is that Ben Whittaker is not world class yet. It's important to finish that statement. He's not world class yet. So there's been a lot of hype, but in fairness, Ben Whittaker has been delivering the goods, but he's not there yet. And even though if you look at his technique and you look at his momentum, it's very impressive, and he's got a very good team and a very good trainer, he hasn't yet established the position of being world class, but he's on the right trajectory and he's on the right path. I guess a big question when it comes to Ben Whittaker is, who does he target? Because unfortunately for him, in that division, there are elite fighters. And when I talk about elite fighters, I'm referring specifically to I'm referring specifically to three elite fighters: Bivol, Butabev, and Benavidez. And stylistically, which fight would be the most winnable for Ben Whittaker? That's a very, very difficult decision to make. So returning to Usyk, this is my final statement. Think of this. Usyk did not lose the belts. He left them behind, because maybe the belts became the trap. Mandatories, politics, risk, and decline. And after Rico, people saw something, not weakness, but reality. Usyk looked human. So maybe this is not retirement. Maybe this is repositioning. Less obligation, more control, more money, and the legacy stays clean. Unbeaten, undisputed, and still powerful. So that's the end of the video. Now I'm trying to build a digital boxing community. That means I'm interested in your comments, I'm interested in your questions, and I'm interested in your observations. Now, if you want to support the channel, simply like and subscribe and click the hype button. And if you want to watch more content like this, then simply click here or click here. As always, thanks for your time. It is much appreciated.